Hey everybody, welcome back to the Horror Trans podcast. My name is Stephanie Bree, and I discuss all things horror on my horror channel. And today, I got some good topics for you. And I'm going to start off, as I always do, with what I watched recently. I was busy again last week, so I only had time to watch three movies. I rewatched Friday the 13th, Part 3 and 4. I love those two movies. I just kind of watch them whenever I'm bored, usually when I'm at work and I have free time. But I also watched a movie called Spookies. You can go to patreon.com/Stephanie Bree and you can uh, watch my live reaction to the movie as I watched it. For the audio commentary, it's only $1 to get in, so you can check that out. And I've done my review of Spookies, which is already live on the channel if you want to go hear my thoughts on it. Um, it was not what I expected, but as I went into it, it was a recommendation. But as I went into it, I realized, like about 10 minutes in, I was like, oh, I have seen this before because I remember watching it one time on Shudder. Um, so I was like, oh, okay. Anyways, so let's get into horror news and rumors. I got a lot of them today. So let's get started. We'll start off with Bloody Disgusting. They've got a story. Well, it's coming from Bloody Disgusting, but I actually watched it happen last night. Godzilla Minus One became the first Godzilla movie to win an Oscar. It won the Oscar for Best Visual Effects. So I think that's pretty cool. Um, you know, um, that's pretty cool for the Godzilla franchise. So if you haven't seen Godzilla Minus One, maybe you should check it out. Next, coming from Bloody Disgusting, this one is interesting. It says Samara Weaving wants to fight Freddy Krueger in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. Um, so it says in an interview, she was asked what does she want to do next, and she said she wants to do a Nightmare on Elm Street. Um, according to the article, it says Mike Flanagan and Heather Langenkamp um, have also discussed wanting to return to the franchise. Um, so yeah, it looks pretty cool. And then this one comes also from Bloody Disgusting. NECA reveals Ghostface Inferno action figure featuring metallic mask, devil mask, and flamethrower. So this is, I believe, from a clip that was in Scream 5, where they were talking about where they showed the different Ghostface from the movies when they were talking about the stab movies. Trying to see if it has a release date. Okay, it doesn't have a release date yet, so there we go. And then this one's coming from Dread Central, and it says Halloween TV series is set for a quote creative reset. Um, it looks like Mark Helwig, the head of worldwide television at Miramax, told Deadline that, quote, we're on a fast track. It's a big priority for us. We've had lots of exciting conversations in recent months with a number of really talented people, and I think we'll have a pretty good idea of what we're going to be doing very soon. We're hoping to lock down the creative team very soon. Um, it says that they're still looking for a writer. And he goes on to say the foundation of it is the original film, the John Carpenter movie, the characters of that film, and perhaps a group of characters that we haven't really focused on that much in recent film versions or even in a number of them. It's a creative reset completely and going back to the original film as opposed to spinning out of any of the more recent film adaptations. Uh, so if you're interested in the Halloween TV series, it sounds like it's going to be another reboot. So there you go. And this is Joe Blow. It says the first Omen gets a 30-second promo ahead of April release. So here's the trailer. I'm going to go ahead and watch it real quick and see what this looks like. Okay, so that's interesting. I couldn't really glean anything from that trailer. It just looks like it's going to be a creepy movie. And also from Joe Blow, it says Death Stalker remake coming from Psycho Gorman director Stephen Kostinski. Um, it says that a newly reimagined installment of the Cult Sword and Sorcery series will. The remake will see Bernhardt taking on the role of a barbarian who finds himself cursed by a magical talisman that draws him into conflict with a malevolent wizard and a clan of monstrous assassins. It is expected to start filming in late April. Um, it says it will put a greater emphasis on the fantasy setting, filled with monsters brought to the screen through practical effects, blah, blah, blah. A Kickstarter will be launching soon to raise funds to make sure the monsters will be as cool as possible. In addition to the film, there will be a Deathstalker comic book from Vault Comics. Writer Tim Seeley, artist Jim Terry, and Slash of Guns N' Roses will be involved somehow. So that's pretty cool if you like that old school film series, Deathstalker. Looks like there's a remake coming, so you might want to check that out. And then also coming from Joe Blow, it just says Freddy's Nightmares Elm Street Anthology TV series is going to get a companion book, Welcome to Prime Time. Um, it says filmmaker Henrique Cuoto and David Denoyer are now putting together a book called Welcome to Prime Time: The Unofficial Freddy's Nightmares Companion. It will be available through Death Cult Press and is expected to ship out the week of April 1st. So that's interesting. If you're a fan of Freddy Krueger and want to know more about Freddy's Nightmares, that could be fun, a fun read. Also from Joe Blow, I have an article that says Eyes in the Trees, Anthony Hopkins to star in The Island of Dr. Moreau reimagining. Um, It says the 1996 version of The Island of Dr. Moreau was directed by John Frankenheimer. Um, blah, blah, blah. Um, And basically, it just says that Anthony Hopkins has signed on to star in the reimagining Eyes in the Trees. I can't seem to find out who is making this. Timothy Woodward Jr. will be the director. Screenplay by B. Harrison Smith and Mike Manning. So, all right, that could be interesting. Hannibal playing another creepy character. That's always fun. And one last bit of news. This comes from iHorror. No, I missed. Yeah, Michael Keaton raves about Beetlejuice sequel, a beautiful and emotional return to the netherworld. Um, he says that it is really good and beautiful, physically. You know what I mean? The other one was so fun and exciting visually. It's all that, but really kind of beautiful and interestingly emotional here and there. I wasn't ready for that. It's great, he says. The movie Beetlejuice is coming out September 6th. Um, and that's all I have for news and rumors. So let's talk about our topics. The first topic is, are thrillers horror? This is a debate that I have had with people countless times over the years. It usually comes up when people are trying to argue uh, whether or not Silence of the Lambs or Seven count as horror movies. Now, um, I know that there are a lot of horror movies that people who are not fans of horror will try to label as thrillers so that they can say they liked a horror movie without saying that they liked a horror movie. I've noticed this happens a lot among people who have a low opinion of horror as a genre, which is unfortunate. Um, I kind of take the stance that thrillers are their own thing. They can have horror elements, and they often do appeal to horror fans. They're definitely um, they're definitely in the horror family for sure. I think horror itself was born out of the thriller um, genre. Some of the early horror movies or movies that inspired horror filmmakers and fans would have been classified as thrillers in their time. Um, I think a lot of the confusion comes from the early days of Hollywood. Horror meant monsters. If it didn't have monsters, it wasn't considered horror. So yeah, it was like vampires, werewolves, the Invisible Man, stuff like that. You had to have something fantastical for it to be considered horror. Um, this started to change, I think, in the 70s and the 80s, especially. The 90s have a lot of thrillers that definitely do fall under the horror camp, I would argue, that people try to label as thriller because they don't want to admit that they like a horror movie. So, what are your thoughts? Do you agree with that, or do you think thrillers are not horror and they're their own separate genre? Let me know in the comments. Next up, we got Halloween specials. So, back in the 80s and 90s, especially, sitcoms were notoriously famous for doing Halloween specials. They would dedicate an episode to the holiday, like they would have a Thanksgiving special, a Christmas special, etc. And I just kind of want to reminisce on some of the Halloween specials that I grew up with. Starting with Roseanne. Roseanne had some really good Halloween specials where they would usually um, decorate their house as a haunted house and invite people in. And you would have some really cool haunted house stuff. Um, couple of instances that come to mind. I remember the episode where John Goodman, um, the dad on Roseanne, dressed up like the Three Stooges. So he had a costume where he was one of the Stooges in the middle, and he had heads of the other two Stooges on his shoulder, and he was reenacting bits from the Three Stooges, and I thought that was pretty fun. The other one I remember is the one where, and it might have been the same episode, I can't remember specifically, but it was where um, DJ, the little boy, wanted to dress up like a witch, and the dad was like desperately trying to get him to say he was a wizard instead of a witch. And I remember that episode vividly because that happened to me one time. I wanted to be a witch, and my parents were like, "Well, why don't you just be a wizard instead?" Um, I don't remember if I got the idea from that episode or not. Probably did, but I don't remember because it was a long time ago. I also remember um, Home Improvement had some interesting Halloween specials as well. They also did the haunted house Halloween party theme thing, and the one I remember the most is the one where um, they had the Halloween house in the They took the kids down to the basement, and they had I can't remember his name, the sidekick, the fat guy. I can't remember his name right now. Al something. I think it was Al something. Anyways, they had his head on a table, and that scared the kids. And that's all I remember. I don't watch Home Improvement anymore. I actually threw away my Home Improvement DVDs. So, anyways, what are some of your favorite Halloween specials from TV sitcoms or TV shows? Next up, we have this is going to be a short episode. Holy crap. I thought the news section would take longer. The next topic is cannibals in horror, or just in general. So, in real life, there are only a handful of instances that are of confirmed cannibalism. The most famous one is the Donner Party. A group of travelers were heading west from somewhere, and they were going through the mountains of the Rocky Mountains in the winter, and they got stuck because of the snow, and the survivors ended up eating those who didn't survive. Now, cannibals are their own genre, often in horror. We have movies like Cannibal Holocaust, Cannibal, is it Ferox? Felox? I can't remember, Ferox, something like that. And other cannibal movies like The Hills Have Eyes is an example. But you also have horror movies where they're not the cannibalism isn't as obvious, but it's a part of the plot or a part of the movie, like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Um, it is a family of cannibals. And then you have, separate from that, you have flesh-eating zombies. Now, they're not technically cannibals, but they actually are because they're humans eating humans. Now, they're undead. So the question is, does that really count as cannibalism or not? The answer is I don't really know. Um, I think um, if it's something like 28 Days Later or The Crazies, then yes, that is absolutely cannibalism. But if it's something like um, Dawn of the Dead or Day of the Dead or Resident Evil, I'm a little more fuzzy on that. Because those zombies are undead, so do they count as humans? I don't know. But that's all I have for today. I wish I was better prepared. I thought the news segment was going to take longer because I had so many stories. Um, but, I didn't really have as much to talk about today as I thought I did. So stay cool.